Suleiman was gone. His successor was Selim II, and for the first time, the empire would be ruled by a sultan who had never commanded an army in battle. His Grand Vizier, Sokolu Mehmed Pasha, would manage the empire's affairs. Sokolu Mehmed Pasha would keep the Ottoman machine moving after Suleiman's death. He served as Grand Vizier under 3 sultans, overseeing military operations and foreign relations. The sultan had changed, the machine had not. Then Ottoman attention turned towards Cyprus. For Venice, the island was a commercial treasure. For the Ottomans, it was a strategic target. In 1570, the Ottoman Empire launched an invasion of Cyprus. In 1570, Ottoman troops landed on Cyprus. What followed was a brutal campaign of sieges, resistance, and relentless military pressure. The defense of Famagusta became one of the most famous episodes of the war. Nicosia had fallen, but Famagusta refused to surrender. For months, its defenders endured bombardment, hunger, and relentless Ottoman attacks. Food and supplies became scarce. Cyprus had fallen to the Ottomans. But the victory triggered a reaction that would soon bring Europe's fleets together against them. The stage was now set for Lepanto. The Ottomans had conquered Cyprus, but now Europe had united against them. In the waters of the Ponto, the empire was dramatic nationalist, most Sudiksant were Hanhar ein minute Brahamgrashant. October 7, 1571. 2 enormous fleets entered the Gulf of Patras. One carried the Ottoman Crescent, the other carried a European coalition determined to stop it. At the center of the Christian fleet stood Don John of Austria, young, ambitious, and commanding a coalition that could not afford to lose. His challenge was enormous, to unite Venice, Spain, and the Papal States against the Ottoman Empire. Opposite him stood Ali Pasha, commander of the Ottoman fleet. The Ottomans had the experience, the numbers, and a century of Mediterranean warfare behind them. But the Holy League had an important advantage: heavy galleasses. Then the silence shattered. Cannons opened fire, smoke swallowed the sea, and the Mediterranean became a battlefield of wood, fire, and blood. The Holy League's galleasses disrupted the approaching Ottoman formations. The battle became a nightmare. On the Ottoman center, pressure intensified, and the flagship of Ali Pasha was surrounded. Ali Pasha was killed, the Ottoman center broke. It was a major naval defeat. By sunset, the Holy League had won. Europe celebrated the victory, but the Ottomans were about to reveal something their enemies had underestimated. The Ottoman machine is rebuilding. Lepanto shattered the myth of Ottoman invincibility at sea, but within months, the empire was rebuilding. The Ottoman machine is rebuilding. This reveals their institutional resilience. Europe had won the battle, but the Ottomans were preparing for the next war. And that was the real secret. The empire knew how to lose without collapsing. Lepanto had destroyed ships, not the system behind them. In Constantinople, the Ottomans immediately began rebuilding the fleet. The imperial shipyards became the center of a massive rebuilding effort, demonstrating the empire's resilience. Venice had helped defeat the Ottomans at Lepanto, but victory had not restored Cyprus. Now Venice faced a painful choice: continue the war or make peace.
The Ottoman divided Japore. Under Martin Godot the Tanda contained will the Fiab, that rivaline de Hero, control the BU speed.
Then the empire turned toward Persia. In 1578, Ottoman armies crossed into the Caucasus, beginning a war that would reshape the eastern frontier. But every expansion came with a cost. The empire was expanding, but the world economy was changing. Silver flowing into Europe helped drive inflation, and Ottoman prices began rising sharply. When military costs increased, the state faced serious financial pressure. And another transformation was beginning. The Janissaries were no longer exactly the force they had once been, and the empire would eventually pay a price. The same system that once strengthened the state could later make adaptation harder. The empire was still expanding. Its armies still won battles. But beneath the victories, inflation, political power, and changing institutions were creating pressures no battlefield could easily defeat. The Ottoman Empire had learnt how to survive its enemies. While Europe watched the Ottomans at sea, another struggle was consuming the empire in the east. Persia had become a battlefield once again. The Caucasus was especially important because it connected several strategic.
Hold the line!
The Ottomans were gaining land, but territory came with a hidden cost. Every new frontier demanded soldiers, money, roads, supplies, and endless administration. The empire's scale was its strength, but also its greatest challenge. But the greatest battles were not always fought on distant frontiers. Inside the palace, power was becoming a dangerous game of influence, family, and ambition. Then, in 1593, another frontier erupted. The Ottomans and the Habsburgs entered a war that would test the empire's military system to its limits. Europe's battlefields were changing. Fortresses grew stronger, firearms spread, and war demanded more money than ever before. The battlefield has changed. The Ottomans were still powerful, but the rules of power were changing. Victory now required more soldiers, more money, and faster adaptation than ever before. The Ottoman Empire had survived Lepanto. It had expanded east. It still challenged the Habsburgs, but now the world around it was becoming harder, faster, and more expensive. The Ottoman Empire was not dying. It was being forced to evolve, and in 1596, Sultan Mehmed III did something few Ottoman rulers had done for decades. He personally marched toward the European battlefield. The Sultan's presence would strengthen morale and show the dynasty's power. The first target was Aga. Its fortress stood between the Ottomans and the Habsburg frontier, and in October 1596, it finally fell. But then news arrived. A huge enemy army was approaching. The next battle would become Elistor. Then the armies collided at Mezocarestes. For a moment, the Ottoman position seemed close to disaster, but the battle suddenly turned. The Ottoman victory challenged the idea of imperial decline. If the empire was supposedly collapsing, why was its army still capable of defeating a major European coalition? The answer was far more complicated than simple decline. The reality was not a straight line downward. By the 17th century, the Ottoman Empire had not collapsed. It had survived war, inflation, rebellion, and defeat, and it was still one of Earth's great powers. The empire was not dying, it was changing, and that distinction would shape the next 2 centuries of Ottoman history. The Ottoman Empire had survived the 16th century, but the 17th, an empire in her built harder question. For 13 exhausting years, the Ottomans fought the Habsburgs. By 1606, both sides were exhausted and ready to negotiate. The result would be the Peace of Zitvatorok. The Peace of Zitvatorok ended the war, but its terms revealed something new. The Habsburg ruler was now treated more like an equal. Diplomacy is often the result of military, economic, and political calculations happening simultaneously. A new sultan now faced an empire under pressure. Ahmed II inherited the throne at only 13 and inherited problems far older than himself. Yet his reign produced one of Constantinople's most famous monuments, the Blue Mosque. While rebellion shook the empire, Ahmed built a monument of confidence. The Blue Mosque rose above Constantinople, proclaiming that the empire still had power. A symbol of enduring Ottoman strength, but beyond Constantinople, another Ottoman world was breaking apart. In Anatolia, rebellion spread as soldiers, peasants, and provincial leaders challenged imperial control. The empire struggled to control its own interior. The empire faced instability inside its borders, a crisis no single victory could solve. Kuyucu Murad Pasha's harsh campaigns restored order at an enormous human cost. Imperial survival came at a terrible price. The Ottoman state survived the rebellions, but survival had revealed a dangerous truth. The empire's greatest problems could now come from within.
Arner learned of Vivstjorn to heal the land those wars had left behind.
In 1617, Ahmed IV died unexpectedly. He left behind no simple succession, and the Ottoman throne entered a dangerous new experiment. Instead of his son, his brother Mustafa was placed on the throne. The empire had solved one problem and created another. Mustafa became sultan, but his reign exposed a weakness inside the new system. The throne needed authority, and the palace was beginning to compete for it. Then came Osman II. Young, ambitious, and deeply aware of the empire's problems, he believed the old system had become dangerous. He viewed the Janissaries as a major obstacle to change, and this was extremely dangerous. At Khotan, the Ottomans discovered how difficult modern warfare had become. The young sultan returned determined to change the army, but the army was listening. It was becoming. Sultans an institution powerful enough to resist him. Osman had challenged the wrong institution. In 1622, the Janissaries revolted, entered Constantinople, and turned the sultan's own capital against him. Osman II's reform dream ended in tragedy. In 1622, the young sultan was murdered, an event that shocked the Ottoman political world. The empire survived, but the soldiers had discovered their political power.
Osman had tried to reform the empire. Instead, his death proved something far more dangerous. The institutions defending the throne could now threaten the throne itself.
But the empire could not have imposed. Next war was far from finished.
The throne is ours to guide. He is but a child.
In 1623, Baghdad fell to the Safavids.
The empire was losing control.
The crisis became real when the Safavids seized Baghdad. For the Ottomans, losing the city meant losing a strategic gateway to Iraq and a symbol of imperial power. The problem was becoming humiliating. It needed a stronger army. Then Murad grew older. And when he finally seized real power, he made his message brutally clear. The era of palace weakness was over.
The Sultan's authority is restored.
Murad wanted order, and he enforced it through fear. In Istanbul, ordinary habits became crimes when the Sultan believed disorder threatened the state. Murad personally patrolled the city at night, instilling fear in his subjects. Murad had restored order at home. Now he turned east. His target was the city the empire had failed to recover for 15 years, Baghdad. In 1638, Murad reached Baghdad. After a brutal siege, the city fell, and the Sultan had achieved the victory that would define his reign. Murad had done what his predecessors could not. He had restored Baghdad, and with it, the image of an Ottoman state capable of striking back. Baghdad had fallen, but Murad knew that victory was more powerful than conquest. Baghdad was back in Ottoman hands. But Murad knew another war could destroy what he had just rebuilt. The time for conquest was ending. The time for settlement had arrived. In 1639, the Ottomans and Safavids finally made peace. The Treaty of Zuhab would shape the frontier between their worlds for generations. Dequent broadly reaffirmed earlier arrangements, recognizing the frontier control of amount of the land. The treaty did more than end a war. It created a frontier that would remain remarkably durable, influencing the political geography of the region long after both empires disappeared. Murad had restored Baghdad, disciplined the capital, and forced peace in the east, but the Sultan who had ruled through fear was running out of time.
The Sultan is dead.
The throne now passed to Ibrahim, Murad's surviving brother.
Sultan Murad is dead. No, it cannot be!
Years of isolation had left him terrified of the very throne he was expected to occupy. Murad had built order around his own authority. Now he was gone. The empire had to prove that its institutions, not one man, could keep it together.
Murad had left the empire stronger, but not invincible. The real test had begun. Could Ottoman institutions survive a sultan who was nothing like him?
Murad had proved that fear could restore an empire. Ibrahim's reign would ask